My name is Jeff Owens, Interim General Manager at WEIU. Today's topic will be food insecurity. We have all kinds of guests inside the studio, which we're so excited about. We have Beth Gillespie. She's the Director of Civic Engagement here at EIU. Her husband, Michael Gillespie, professor in the Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminology Department.
Yes, sir.
And, of course, Crystal Brown is here, who I guess is the Assistant Director of the same department as Beth, so I don't have to say all those words again. Well, thank you all for coming in on this, I would say gorgeous Monday. That might be a white lie because it's not really beautiful, but at least it's Monday. The semester's over.
Sun's shining.
There you go. So, food insecurity, I know most people know what it is, and you guys really brought it to my attention a couple of years ago, and so we've had you on a handful of times talking about it, and I guess I'll let Michael start a little bit. Maybe give a background of what food insecurity is and maybe where we're at right now.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, food insecurity is actually a risk factor. It's a level of risk that you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and if you do, that it's going to be healthful. So we see food insecurity as being disconnected from quality food supplies, maybe not being able to access food in socially acceptable ways, which oftentimes in our society is just the grocery store with your own money. So we think about different ways about using food pantries, food stamps and things as being not totally socially acceptable in our society. But food insecurity really is that risk that you're not going to know where your next meal is going to come from. Okay.
And I guess, from Crystal and Beth's perspective, why are your departments so behind this so much? Where does that come from?
Well, one of the things I think that Crystal and I have really taken a focus on over the last 5 years is this idea that people in our community are hungry and are struggling to put food on their own tables, and hunger is a very easy thing to hide. It doesn't have a look. You don't, walk by somebody, whether you're walking around campus, you're walking around our community and say, that person looks hungry, they must be struggling. And so you just don't know unless you're familiar with the data and the research that people like Michael have been doing. But it is our responsibility, we think, as individuals, to do something about it. And so we have really made it kind of a pillar of the programming that comes out of civic engagement and volunteerism to educate our campus community about food insecurity and hunger and to do something about it. And one of our favorite volunteer opportunities is we take volunteers to the Charleston Food Pantry every single Thursday night, year round, and help put food on the table for people who are struggling to do that without that extra assistance.
Would you like to add anything, Crystal?
Maybe talk about how it got started at the Charleston Food Pantry, that partnership.
We've been doing the Charleston Food Pantry for, about 10 years now. And it just really came from a need that the community saw, and our campus saw, that the pantry was only open during afternoon hours 3 days a week. And so what about those families that have a need but work during the day? How are we helping them? So we thought it was a way that we could do a small part to open one evening a week to help those families that aren't available to get there during the day.
And we were hoping today we were going to break a little news, and I didn't even know about it till you got here, but you were making a recommendation to Eastern's Board of Trustees or President to maybe try to get a food pantry on campus. Talk about that if you can.
Yeah. You want to talk about that?
We submitted a proposal last week. It's something that the three of us and a larger group of people have been working on for quite a while. This has actually been an effort extended over many years that has sort of evolved into this moment, and the opportunity opened it up itself. So we have a proposal in to the Vice President of Student Affairs, who's going to review it, and we're hoping that in the fall, when we come talk to you again, we're going to be able to say that it opened and was successful, and everything's going to be good.
I know you do a lot of research, Michael, from a professorial standpoint. Are there any updated numbers or anything that you can share? Because I always love to see some of those stats.
Yeah, I wish I could say that the news was good, as if there was some big change, but it's persistently high. We're still at 39% of our students on campus who show enough risk factors to be labeled food insecure, and that's the way that it's been over the length of my research over the past 4 years. We know that our students who are food insecure show higher risk levels for not making progress towards their degree, being as engaged in their classes, not feeling capable to be the best self that they need to be students here at Eastern. So it's data that hits home as a professor, but it's also if you are a human being, when you have a heart and you understand that students are struggling, not just on our campus, but across the country, that it's really sort of a call to alarm, a call to action to be able to address.
Because you're really thinking about 4 out of 10 students don't know where their next meal coming from. Is that kind of how you look at it?
Exactly how.
Are there other risk factors, or how to talk about those in terms
the
of
risk factors? Really, if you think about the risk factors that go into where most people fall into risk for anything. So for our students, it's being first generation status. It's being a student of color. It's being a female student. It's being a student who comes from a low-income family. It's being a student who can't afford the high end of all of the food options that are here on campus, so they have the lowest amount of swipes. Any of those risk factors that put them at risk of any academic challenges, any social challenges, any health challenges, all coordinate with this idea of food insecurity. So it becomes one of those key issues that really affects a large amount of students.
One of the questions that when we talk about stats and we always talk about the problems is that I wanted to ask today is, how do we get solutions? What are the solutions out there to reduce that number and to make food insecurity not such a prevalent issue on campus and really all through society?
I think it's a couple different things. I think the first one is we have to be creative in our solutions. And one of the things that Crystal and I have done over the last 18 months, maybe almost 2 years at this point. Time during COVID has felt a little weird. But we have snack stations at the library. We partnered with the library here on campus, and we've got 3 different stations that have snacks in them that are free. They're grab and go, and they're available to anybody who's in there studying, because I don't know about you, Jeff, but I get hangry, and when I'm hangry, I can't concentrate. It's very hard to be nice. It is definitely hard to be reasonable. But retaining information, I know Michael would agree with all of those statements. But if I'm trying to study or pay attention in class and I'm hungry, I'm not going to be able to retain that information. And so we know that this is going to be the same for students. So that was why this partnership with the Booth Library came about. And originally we thought, we'll probably have to refill these once a week. It'll be fine. And within the first week, we were refilling them every single day. And so we knew that students, once they knew they were there, that they were utilizing them, that they were taking the food, and that it was making a difference. That's what we've heard from students, is that they're really grateful that it's there. It's super fast and easy to grab, a grab and go snack, keep studying, keep working on that progress towards completion of their courses and to graduation ultimately. But that those snack stations have made a huge difference. And we've also gotten support from the community. Initially, a big chunk of the funding for that came from the Hunger Hike, which is a group of churches that gets together and fundraises every year for local food insecurity and poverty issues. And so they donated a couple $100, and that's been fueling, literally, no pun intended, our snack stations for the last 18 months to 2 years, So it didn't have to take $1 million, but it's making a difference every single day in the lives of our students.
Are you going to try to increase places where on campus where maybe the snack stations are, other than just the library?
Well, that's really been one of the interesting things that we came across in our research, and ultimately was one of the reasons that we were really wanting to push the food pantry issue forward again to see if we could potentially get one here on campus, is we've identified a lot of different silos. There are multiple departments on campus, like sociology, anthropology, and criminology, which is a mouthful.
Theologies, I just call it.
Yeah, theologies. They're a department that have recognized that students are struggling and try to create a departmental food pantry. They're not the only ones, so there are pockets happening across campus where people are trying to address what their students are needing. But when you have those individual efforts, it's really hard to have kind of a plan that's cohesive and intentional and actually addresses the issue that students don't have enough food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so are things like grab-and-go snacks great? Absolutely. And they are way better than nothing, but they aren't putting meals on the table for people, which is what we're hoping to be able to do with a pantry on campus, is give students food that they can create meals with so that they can be sustained and then ultimately do better in classes, do better towards graduation, and go out and do good in the world.
Do any of you have any like personal stories of students who appreciated so much of the help that you've given them with directing them to food pantries or snack stations, or there's other places in Coles County where you can get food from the pantries? Is it any stories like that? I love those behind the scenes stories of people. You don't have to give names, but does anybody have one?
I mean, I mean, my interest in this topic started 6 or 7 years ago when I was giving a final for my statistics class. I walked by the computer lab up in the sociology, anthropology, and criminology department, and there was a student there who looked like that they were ashen. You could just tell that they were struggling just to sit at that desk and study for my exam. And I went in there, I talked to them, I confronted them, and I said, "What's going on?" They told me that they hadn't eaten in 2.5 days because they didn't have money and their food stamps ran out. I went over and bought them breakfast and told them not to take the exam. That person went on to graduate school, got their master's degree in social work, and is now doing work within the food justice system to help link people up. So it's not just that our students are struggling to be able to sit at a desk, but moments where we can actually say we're helping out these students, then they're going to be able to take that and go on and do better things to make sure that their former peers, but now students that they're going to be working with, are able to not have that same situation that they were once in. And that's just one story. We could talk for hours about this and how students appreciate these types of things and all the feedback that CVO gets from all of these students. I mean, it is one of the clearest examples where we can meet basic needs of students so that they can be their best selves.
Are there other signs that professors and workers and employees at EIU can look for to try to help students? Because it's not easy for students to come forward. If that kid hadn't eaten in 2.5 days, it's because he didn't want to come and ask. So what can we be looking for?
Right. I mean, there's extremes. Like you can look at somebody, and if they haven't had food, you know that. Sometimes it looks like some of the things that annoy us as professors, that students in the back of the class trying to stay awake, it's not because they were out partying all night, it's because they haven't eaten. A lot of these similar things, maybe they're wearing the same clothes to class. It's not because they're too lazy to do laundry, it's because they don't have the money to do laundry. And that's a decision that they have to make between getting something to eat and being able to afford to do their clothes. So if you think about just patterns of people's behavior and what you would expect, you can see a lot of times those things that are off in the way that people will act.
Crystal and Beth, in your departments, I mean, we joke about it kind of now, but how has COVID affected some of the ways that you have to help and interact from your department?
It's been real, and Crystal is much more knowledgeable about the ins and outs, so I'll let her talk about some of this in just a second, but it's been very interesting to see how COVID has impacted people's using food pantries because of the assistance that the government has been handing out. Handing out's not the right word, because of the assistance that the government is offering people, which is fantastic. But like our numbers at the Charleston Food Pantry, we used to see on average between 15 and 25 families every single week, and that number has dropped significantly since COVID happened because of the assistance that's been provided. And the other thing that a lot of our students aren't aware of, but that we've been trying to help spread the word, is that again, since COVID, they are actually eligible for food stamps, whereas prior to COVID, they weren't, because if you're not working a certain amount of hours, you don't qualify. So like our graduate students, they're contracted to work 19.5 hours. So, but in order to qualify for food stamps, among other things, you have to be working at least 20 hours. But that half-hour difference between what their contract says and what they have to work is enough to make them immediately ineligible. But since COVID, they've been able to apply, and then some of them have gotten that support, which makes a huge difference. You know, if you're only making $900 a month or whatever your stipend is, like that's not enough to cover rent, to pay for utilities, to pay for food, and then anything else, you know. So it just, we've been really glad for that. But I know that there are other pieces that people are getting support on, so that it's definitely dropped the numbers that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the other support, obviously, in addition to the stimulus money, there's extra benefits from those that are receiving food stamps. They're getting increased to the maximum level for their family size if they weren't already there, which is helping them a ton. Additionally, based on whether their kids are in school or versus remote, they're getting pandemic food stamp money for those school-age children. So, like Beth said, because of all of that, we know there's still a need based on their economic status, but they're not feeling like they needed to come to the pantry right now. So we're only averaging on Thursday nights 3 to 5 families a week.
You think that'll go up here this summer when some of these funds run out?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's going to be
Yeah.
it's going to be a
And
stark difference.
Yep.
Come fall, very very stark difference.
And didn't some of like the high school students get like the link cards or extra that they used to not get, so they could actually
Yeah.
help themselves? And I
Yes,
heard-
that is that pandemic EBT or
Okay.
food stamp money for all K through 12 students who had any remote learning during this school year.
Okay, I didn't know where that came from and how that came about. What about volunteer opportunities this summer, either through the department or anything that's going on? Do you guys need help?
Well, one of the big things that we are doing again this summer is the summer meal program, which is all about, you know, putting food on the table for kids. Crystal and I often say, especially during the summer, like if you're a family that qualifies for free or reduced lunches for your kids at school, which in our elementary schools here in Charleston, over 50% of the families qualify for free or reduced lunch. So school ends as it usually does in the summer. But then all of a sudden, those families are now responsible for 10 extra meals per child per week, which can add up. I mean, like, you think about how much it costs to feed yourself if you go out for one breakfast or one lunch. Now multiply that times 10 every single week. And so a family who may already be struggling, saying, do I pay rent, or do I fix my car, or do I put food on the table? Now they're having to come up with extra money for those meals. So we're trying to do what we can by doing the summer meals. And it's a partnership with the Salvation Army in Mattoon. They've gotten a Food on the Move grant. So they prepare the food and we go and pick it up. And then we'll bring it back to 2 different locations. We're going to be going to Nico Fields on the north end of Charleston, and then Longacre Estates, and just handing out free lunches. And because of COVID, one of the changes we made last year that we're going to do again this year that I think is a really smart thing to do is it's just grab and go. So prior to COVID, kids had to stay and eat that food right there with us. But to keep everybody safe, they come pick it up. We check them off the list, and then they head back home to eat the food. So, but last year we served well over 1,000 meals, and so we're going to be doing that again starting June.
It'll start
1st,
Monday.
3rd.
It'll start Monday, June 7th.
There we go.
It'll be Monday through Friday all summer up until I think that's Friday, August 5th, 6th, whatever that Friday is. Nico Fields, I want to say, is at 11 o'clock, and Longacre Estates will be at 11:30. So we'll be at both sites for about 20 minutes. And it is truly open not to just those families in need, but to any child under the age of 18.
Oh, that's great. I know on your website you also list of every place that people can. I don't like the word handout either. It just sounds bad, but where they are going to get some nourishment and some assistance.
Yeah.
Is that still up there? All those places?
Yeah, and that's one of, I think, Jeff, kind of like the words like, handout, or it's we need to work on changing that
What
language.
words do we need? Yeah, we need to come up with something, some wordage.
I like to use the word support. One of my personal philosophies is that life is going to be hard for all of us at some point, and hard could look 1,000 different ways, but I think our job as human beings is to do some good and to help people when their life is hard, whether that's needing to come to a food pantry, for example, just because of their family circumstances, so that when life is hard for me, that there's somebody there who can help me make the hard days feel a little less hard. I don't know, what kind of words do you like to use other than support?
I mean, support, aid, assistance, anything that's going to have a positive impact on, the people that you're talking to who actually come in and ask you for that support, making them feel good, a hand up, things that are sort of growth minded. Like Beth said, we've all been at some place in our life where we needed help with something. No one has not. And what it felt like to have to ask for assistance or any kind of help at those moments, it takes a good level of empathy to be able to think back to those moments and give back and understand that it humbles people to have to go out and ask for that, and to have a little grace and a little humility there when you're offering that help to them goes a long way.
Is the other part of this the frustration that we live in a society that has rules and codes, that we waste so much food that could be used for the good? That frustrates me when I hear people, we had to throw away this, we had to throw away these pizzas, and we couldn't take them to the homeless shelter because they were already cooked or whatever. Yeah, I know we can't change it, but there's got to be some kind of wiggle room there. Would anybody agree or disagree, or am I the idiot on this one?
You are not an idiot, and I will 100% back you up. I mean, we live in a fear society where we're afraid of every little thing, and I think some of it can go to something like COVID, that is a very serious situation, but it's not a foodborne thing. It's a respiratory ailment. But we, even before this and after this, I mean, you're right. There's so much food that goes wasted that can go and help people, and it's not coming out of a can. It's not coming out of a bag. It's not coming out of your microwave. It's coming out of a kitchen. And those are the best meals. I think we can all understand that. But there's a lot of fear against that sort of thing, both as a public policy, but also sort of as a social stigma. And, it goes a long way, and people go to extreme efforts to make sure that doesn't happen. It is 100% frustrating and can be one of those avenues towards just intense creativity about how we can repurpose that food in a way that people are going to be comfortable with and people can get help.
Do all the food pantries and food places that provide support, do they all work together and support each other? Or is that a common factor amongst them all?
I'll give you one example. The Charleston Food Pantry, because every month the food pantries get whatever they order from the Eastern Illinois Food Bank. But there are times where the food bank has free items out there, unusual items that we wouldn't normally see at the food pantry. For example, baby food, dog food, other random products. So what's great, and I've seen, is the Charleston Food Pantry as an example will say, there's dog food out there. I can't use it here to give out to clients, but I can get that and share that with the local animal shelters. Or they can get baby food and they'll put a little on in the waiting room, but if there's a whole truckload, we can get baby food and donate it to Choices for Pregnancy to help those families in need, or share it with other food pantries. So they are definitely working together for the greater good of the community.
And what does community gardening and community gardens factor into all this?
Oh, they have been a tremendous support to food pantries. Places like, there's a community garden out at Sarah Bush Lincoln Hospital, and they bring produce that they have grown and then harvested. There we go. Something. They pull it off the plant, put it in a bucket. Life's good. But they bring all of that fresh produce to us, and then it's handed out to the families in need. And so much of when people who haven't had the need to go to a food pantry, I think you think of a lot of canned goods, which is a big part of what they get. But to also have the opportunity to pick fresh tomatoes or cucumbers or squash or any of the things that are easy to grow in our region is so huge, and is such a blessing for people to have access to that kind of fresh grown food. But it also is available to the families that are coming to the food pantries, which is huge. And the Sarah Bush Lincoln Garden's not the only one that does that. We've got a ton of local farms and gardens that are pulled together, that their whole intent is to support people within our community. You know, that's what Fit to Serve's community garden in Mattoon's all about. They're putting in a garden behind the health department on 18th Street. So, like, it's an easy way to make a huge difference. You know, Standing Stone Community Center, they also have a food pantry there, and they were doing tomato plants in buckets every year for a handful of years, so that when people would come to the pantry, we'd also say, would you like your own tomato plant? You know, so that they could then grow their own food as well in a way that didn't matter whether you lived in a house or an apartment, because it was already growing in its own space. So.
Is there a type? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, you know, this goes back to the question that you asked about what do we do about this, right? Like, what are some creative solutions? How do we actually make this change? And to have like a food system at the local level where pantries are talking to each other, and there's community gardens, and there's large organizations that, like Sarah Bush, that can really make an impact, but there's also those, you know, cottage farmers who are doing things to pay back. When you have a system like that and you actually attack the structural inequalities, that's where the difference is made. Snack stations, a food pantry, that's short-term stuff, but these kinds of relationships are the relationships that can really change the way that people can access help and get food, and that's the amazing part of all of that.
Interesting. The other thing is that with COVID and climate change, there's actually food shortages on the other end of people that can afford it, but they can't get it. So is there a ripple effect down, or are those two separate things? Have you looked into that at all?
I mean, climate change is, you know, something that we're going to have to be adapting to for such a long time. But it's going to be sort of like the people who are at the forefront that can see those changes. And, you know, there's students who are interested in these issues, and there's agronomists, I think that's the right word, who are interested in these issues, but also interested in how is this going to play down that line where there's people at the other end who are just going to be so wholly affected by this. So maybe it's a hybridization of different seeds that are going to be able to adapt better, or maybe different soil sciences and things that they can help adapt for that too. So there are people at that, you know, that end who are thinking down the line about what this means for those subsistence farmers in other countries.
We've got about a minute and a half left today. We're talking about food insecurity. Just make sure I haven't forget anything. So
yeah, I feel like that's not enough time. Where did it go?
I'm sorry.
So you had asked originally, or asked about volunteering. Yes, if you are interested in volunteering, we do take volunteers to the Charleston Food Pantry every single Thursday night. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, please give us a call, 581-3967. We can work it out. We do have a schedule. There are, the month of May is already spoken for, but let us know, and we can start to work people in. So that's something. And if you have the financial ability to donate money, every dollar that you donate to a food pantry allows them to buy $10 worth of food. So if you can give money, that has the biggest impact. If you can't, please volunteer with your time, your energy, or donate canned goods from your own kitchen. It all makes a difference, and it takes all of us to be able to do something about this for people both on campus, like our students, but also people right here in our community.
Give us that number again, Crystal, in case people want to volunteer.
581-3967.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. I appreciate all three of you coming. It seems like when we talk about this, it goes fast because there's just so much to cover. But I appreciate all the work that you all three do for the community and to try to solve this problem. And hopefully we'll have you in the back in the fall. We'll have a food pantry and maybe some good news.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
We are WEIU.